Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher who profoundly influenced existential philosophy, saw a particular testing dynamic in relationships between men and women, aimed at assessing emotional stability, strength, and the ability to provide security. Schopenhauer believed that women, although different in their requirements, are guided by three fundamental criteria that help them assess a man's worth as a partner in life. The first of these tests is the test of power and security. According to Schopenhauer's philosophy, women always seek a sense of security, both emotional and material, in their relationships with men. A man who is unable to provide this security lacks the basic requirement for being a partner in a woman's eyes. A woman tests a man by examining his ability to cope with difficult situations, take control of challenges, and overcome adversity. The second test is the capacity for emotional understanding and empathy. Schopenhauer notes that women naturally expect men to be able to understand their emotions and needs, as well as offer emotional support in times of crisis. This test isn't simply about answering questions, but rather about a man's willingness to demonstrate sensitivity to his partner's feelings, for example, through acts of empathy and presence during emotionally difficult times. The final test, according to Schopenhauer, concerns a man's stability and loyalty. Women, by nature more concerned with family security and raising children, expect constancy from a man. This test involves assessing whether a man is capable of maintaining a long-term bond, offering a sense of stability and loyalty, which are the foundations of lasting relationships. In this philosophical analysis of Schopenhauer, a woman does not perceive a man only through the prism of external attractiveness, but examines his ability to provide emotional and material stability, which is necessary for her to feel secure in a relationship. Carl Jung, a psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, introduced the concept of archetypes, universal psychological patterns that exist in the collective unconscious. From Jung's perspective, every person carries archetypal images and symbols that influence their thoughts, actions, and relationships. In the context of male-female relationships, archetypes play a key role in how a woman evaluates a man. Jung argued that relationships are deeply rooted in the unconscious and the archetypes each person carries within. A woman subconsciously evaluates a man through the lens of these archetypes, not just superficial character traits or behaviors. These archetypes shape her expectations of her partner and influence how she understands and interprets relationships. One of the most important archetypes a woman seeks in a man is the hero archetype. A hero is a figure who faces hardships, takes on challenges, and overcomes adversity. For many women, a man who can be a hero in their lives is one who is not only courageous and strong but also able to build a shared narrative with her and support her through difficult times. A woman tests a man by seeing if he can rise to the challenge in the face of problems and be a reliable guide. Another archetype that influences a man's assessment is the caregiver archetype. This archetype is associated with care, concern, and responsibility for another person. When seeking a partner, a woman asks herself if a man has the capacity to be a caregiver, whether he can care for her needs, and her emotions. Testing this archetype is done subtly, for example, by examining how a man responds to her emotional needs and how he reacts to situations that require care and tenderness. A woman will notice how a man treats her emotions, how he supports her in moments of weakness, and whether he can protect her from mental and physical pain. The final archetype that women often test in men is the king archetype. The king archetype symbolizes authority, stability, and the ability to lead. In the context of relationships, a woman seeks in a man someone who can provide a sense of security, who takes responsibility for his own life and for the life shared together. This archetype concerns the ability to make decisions, to lead in difficult times, and to be a reliable person. Testing this archetype can manifest in situations where a woman evaluates a man's decision-making, how he handles responsibilities, and how he expresses his self-confidence. Jung's concept of archetypes provides insight into why a woman might sense subtle cues that might indicate how a man fits into these deeply ingrained patterns. Any man who aligns his actions with these archetypal expectations not only meets a woman's psychological needs but also becomes more understanding of the deep, unconscious needs of her psyche. For many women, emotional security is one of the most important foundations of relationships. In his Psychology, Carl Jung emphasized the importance of a sense of security in building healthy, fulfilling relationships. From this perspective, a woman tests a man not only physically but, above all, emotionally. Seeking emotional stability in a partner is crucial for her, as it forms the foundation upon which the entire relationship is built. Emotional security is not only a matter of ensuring stability, but also of the deep understanding and support a man can offer. Jung believed that a crucial element in interpersonal relationships is the process of individuation, which allows each partner to more fully discover their true self. However, for this process to unfold healthily, a woman must be confident that her partner not only understands her feelings but also can respond appropriately to her emotional needs. One of the first tests a woman conducts is a man's empathy test. How does he react when she shares her feelings? Can he listen without judging her, without interrupting, and above all, without trying to solve the problem before she has had a chance to fully express it? This test reveals whether a man understands that a woman doesn't always expect immediate solutions but simply wants to be heard and understood. Jung noted that men, especially those who have not undergone the process of individuation, may struggle to respond appropriately to the emotions of others. In such a situation, a woman often tests her partner to see if he can manage his emotions and if he is willing to accept the emotional nuances that arise in relationships. Such tests can take the form of trials in which the woman tests the man's ability to cope with her emotional outbursts or difficult life situations. By asking subtle questions about his ability to empathize or respond to her needs, the woman observes whether her emotional needs are treated with respect and understanding. Another important aspect of the emotional test is how a man reacts to a woman's fears or insecurities. When a woman experiences difficult moments, for example, related to stress at work, uncertainty about the future, or health problems, how a man supports her demonstrates his ability to provide her with a sense of emotional security. Often, men in these situations offer solutions, instead of simply being present and giving the woman space to express her emotions. This distinction is crucial for a woman who is testing whether her partner can fully accept her emotions without feeling compelled to immediately resolve them. A woman also tests a man by gauging his reactions to her own emotional challenges. Is he patient when she's going through a difficult time? Does he give her space to process her emotions, or does he try to fix or reassure her? How a man responds to these challenges will be a measure of his ability to provide her with emotional stability and a sense of security. From a Jungian perspective, this need for emotional support and security is not only a matter of expectation but also stems from deep archetypes a woman carries within herself. The archetypes of mother, nurturer, and protector are present in every woman and influence how she perceives emotional needs in relationships. A woman, testing a man for emotional security, seeks a partner who can assume the role of a nurturer, one who not only provides stability but also accepts her emotional needs. Ultimately, testing a man's ability to understand her emotions and ensure her emotional safety is a key element that determines the future of the relationship. Whether a man can adapt to these emotional needs will determine whether the relationship will be lasting and healthy, or whether it will fade away the moment her sense of safety is compromised. In Schopenhauer's philosophy, as well as in Jungian psychology, power and dominance are present as key elements in interpersonal relationships, particularly between men and women. From the perspective of both thinkers, men are often perceived as possessing the capacity to dominate, not only physically but also mentally and emotionally. Women, in turn, subconsciously test a man's ability to take control in situations that require decisiveness and leadership. In practice, testing a man's ability to dominate isn't about trying to gain dominance in the relationship, but rather about whether he can be a confident leader who makes decisions in difficult moments. A woman subconsciously tests whether a man can face challenges and guide her through situations that require confidence and decisiveness. In a relationship lacking this dynamic, a woman may feel insecure, and her sense of security may be threatened. Tests of power and dominance manifest themselves in various forms. One of the most common examples is when a woman tests a man's decision-making skills. This might be when she expects him to make an important decision, such as about the future of their relationship, how they spend their time together, or matters concerning their future careers. A woman wants to see if a man will not only make a decision but also if he will be able to take responsibility for its consequences. From a psychological perspective, Jung describes the king archetype as one who is responsible for his kingdom as well as for his subjects. In the context of relationships, the man assumes a role that involves leadership, making difficult decisions, and providing a sense of stability. The woman tests this king archetype to see if he can assume a leadership role, even in the most difficult situations. If the man is unable to assume responsibility, the woman may feel uneasy, because in her eyes, a lack of dominance and authority may indicate an inability to provide protection and stability. Another aspect of the dominance test concerns situations that require action and immediate decision-making. A woman often tests a man's response to challenges, both personal and external. It's often in moments of crisis, when the situation becomes tense, that she asks herself if he can take control and manage stress. For example, when a couple faces financial problems, the man is put to the test. Is he capable of taking responsibility for resolving the situation? Can he demonstrate the skills to take action in difficult circumstances? Jung highlights the importance of a sense of power and control as an inherent characteristic of a man, who not only makes a woman feel secure but also teaches her how to navigate life using his guidance. Therefore, the dominance test is not only a test of whether a man can control the external situation, but also whether he can control himself, his emotions, reactions, and actions in the face of difficult situations. A woman tests whether a man not only dominates externally but also internally, whether he can maintain composure, solve problems, and take responsibility for the relationship. In the context of interpersonal relationships, a woman also tests a man's ability to demonstrate dominance in more subtle, everyday situations. This can include everything from making decisions about shared plans, to resolving problems at work, to deciding on the future of their relationship. The test of dominance is subtle but crucial in a man's assessment, as it determines whether a woman will feel safe and valued in the relationship. Finally, from Schopenhauer's perspective, a woman tests a man's capacity for dominance, seeking not only someone who will provide her with security but also someone who will be able to set boundaries and assume responsibility for their shared life. The test of dominance is not a test of aggression, but rather a test of responsibility and the ability to take control when the situation calls for it. In the context of interpersonal relationships, especially between men and women, the ability to adapt and grow is one of the key elements a woman evaluates in her partner. From a Jungian perspective, the process of personal development, known as individuation, is fundamental to a person's maturation and discovery of their true self. This process affects both men and women, but it is the woman, through her tests, who very often examines whether the man is able to adapt to changing life conditions and how he responds to the challenges that reality presents. Schopenhauer, although his philosophy has a more pessimistic tone, also emphasized the role of development in interpersonal relationships. He believed that men who were unable to adapt to changing circumstances were less valuable partners in the eyes of women. For Schopenhauer, a woman seeking a lifelong partner must be confident in a man's ability to change, grow, and adapt to new situations, both emotional and social. When a woman tests a man's adaptability, she doesn't expect him to be perfect in everything. However, she does expect him to be capable of growing, both emotionally and intellectually. These tests are designed to assess whether a man can learn from his mistakes, adapt to new challenges, and respond to his partner's changing needs and the circumstances of their life together. From a Jungian perspective, a man who doesn't individuate, who can't transcend established patterns and adapt to new circumstances, would be perceived by a woman as less mature. In such a case, a woman begins to test a man, observing how he reacts to crises and life changes. This testing often manifests itself in more subtle ways, such as examining how a man reacts to stressful situations, changes at work, changes in their daily lives, or changes in their relationship. For example, can he handle the new responsibilities that arise as a result of a move, a job change, or difficult family situations? Adaptability tests can take many forms. A woman might test a man by examining how he responds to changing emotional needs in a relationship. How does a man respond to her changing needs, for example, when she goes through a difficult period in her life? Can he be flexible and adapt his behavior to her emotional needs, or does he remain fixed and unable to learn from experience? A woman seeking stability in a relationship wants to be sure that her man will be able to handle future challenges, both those that arise on a personal level and those that arise from external circumstances. This is a test that not only examines a man's responsibility but also his capacity for personal growth. A woman will test a man in situations that require flexibility, the ability to adapt to new conditions, and the ability to learn from his mistakes. The ability to adapt and grow is also a test of masculinity in the context of changes occurring in relationships. A woman can observe how a man reacts to changes in their life together, for example, when new goals, ambitions, or challenges arise. How does a man cope with these changes? Can he adapt his plans to the new reality, or will he remain stuck in his comfort zone and unable to move forward? From Jung's perspective, a man's true maturity is revealed in his ability to integrate both his inner and outer experiences. A man who is able to change, grow, and adapt to new circumstances is perceived by a woman as a stable partner who will be able to cope with the future challenges life brings. Adaptation and development are therefore key tests a woman undertakes to ensure that a man is able to build a future with her, one based on flexibility, understanding, and a willingness to grow. Love, from the perspectives of both Schopenhauer and Jung, is one of the most complex and multifaceted human experiences. Schopenhauer viewed love in relationships between men and women as a kind of illusion intended to preserve the species. For him, love was not a true feeling but a mechanism that compels humans to reproduce. However, Jung, in his deep psychology, understood love as one of the most important forces that unite people, with deep roots in the collective unconscious and archetypes. For a woman, love isn't just a superficial feeling, it's a deep emotional bond that must be mutual, authentic, and stable. A woman, by nature, conducts various tests to assess whether a man truly loves her, not just whether he's attractive or well-suited to her needs on a physical or social level. The test of love is often subtle and doesn't always involve direct questions about feelings. Instead, it manifests itself in everyday interactions that reveal whether a man is ready to fully commit to the relationship. The first and most important test is that of loyalty. A woman, desiring to feel secure in a relationship, tests whether a man is faithful not only physically but also emotionally. Loyalty is a willingness to be with another person under various circumstances, regardless of difficulties or temptations. This test can take many forms. For example, a woman may consciously or subconsciously test whether a man can trust her, whether he is not hiding important matters from her, or whether he is not engaging in emotional relationships outside of the relationship. Mutual loyalty is a test that reveals whether a man treats her as the one, special person in his life. The second test a woman often performs is the commitment test. A man who truly loves a woman not only talks about his feelings but also commits to the relationship through actions. A woman tests a man by observing how he expresses his feelings, how he cares for her in his daily life, and how he dedicates time and attention to the development of their relationship. How a man invests in the relationship, whether he is willing to make sacrifices, and whether he supports her in difficult times, is one of the most important indicators of love in a woman's eyes. In his psychology, Jung emphasized the importance of projection in interpersonal relationships, particularly in the context of love. According to this theory, a woman can project her inner needs onto a man, expecting him to fulfill the role of her ideal partner. The love test she conducts also examines whether a man can live up to these projections, meaning whether he can fulfill the role a woman assigns him in her psyche. A woman tests whether a man can meet her deepest expectations and also whether he can satisfy her emotional needs, which go beyond a physical relationship. Another test of love is the test of self-sacrifice. A woman examines a man's willingness to sacrifice his own interests for her own good or the good of their relationship. This test isn't about grand gestures, but about small, everyday sacrifices that demonstrate his commitment. This could be devoting time, effort, or resources to a woman's passions, her career, or her emotional well-being. A woman, testing a man's love, observes how he reacts to her needs and how he can respond to them, whether he's willing to make small sacrifices for her happiness and development. Finally, one of the key aspects of the love test is to determine whether a man can be authentic in his feelings. A woman tests whether his love is genuine and not hiding manipulative or selfish intentions. She examines whether a man is capable of expressing his feelings openly, honestly, and selflessly. This test often manifests itself when a woman is experiencing emotional or life difficulties. A woman tests whether a man is willing to be there for her during these difficult times, whether he won't withdraw when challenges arise, and whether he will demonstrate true affection in difficult situations. From Schopenhauer's perspective, who viewed love as an illusion, a woman, testing a man, seeks to discover whether his love has a lasting, deep foundation or is merely a fleeting fascination. For Schopenhauer, love was based on instincts that led to procreation, but a woman, testing a man, sought to ascertain that this relationship had a deeper meaning and was based on genuine affection. From Jung's perspective, the test of love is also a test of a man's capacity for individualization and growth. A woman seeks a man who not only loves her but who can grow with her, support her development, and create a shared space where both can be fully themselves. Love, according to Jung, is a process in which two people learn about each other, project their inner images onto each other, and then integrate these images, creating a shared, authentic bond. In interpersonal relationships, especially romantic ones, a woman evaluates a man not only through the prism of his personality, emotional, and intellectual traits, but also within the context of the broader social and cultural landscape to which he belongs. In his Deep Psychology, Carl Jung spoke of collective complexes, which are beliefs, values, and social norms that influence individual decisions and actions. In this context, a woman seeking a partner does not evaluate him solely based on personal preferences but also examines how his presence fits into her social and cultural life. The social and cultural tests a woman undergoes are often subtle, but they are crucial in building a lasting relationship. From Schopenhauer's perspective, a woman is drawn to stability and order, and a man who is expected to bring chaos or disruption to her social world does not meet her expectations. For him, relationships are based on rational foundations, on a proper fit, which can encompass material, social, and practical aspects. A woman, therefore, tests a man, seeing if he can adapt to her environment and the role he plays in her social life. The first test a woman conducts in this context is one of integration into her social and family life. Every woman seeking a partner wants to be sure that the man will be able to accept and understand her circle of close people, family, friends, and co-workers. In this test, a woman examines how the man relates to her social environment, how he behaves in social situations, and what kind of relationships he has with people who are important to her. A woman often asks herself, can a man integrate into my world? Does he understand my friends and family? Is he able to respect the values that are important to me? Social tests can also encompass more subtle aspects, such as a man's attitudes toward matters such as money, career, education, or leisure activities. For example, a woman might be testing how a man responds to her own career aspirations, passions, and interests. Can he appreciate and support them? Can he accept that her career or interests may require her to sacrifice time and, in some cases, space? Often, a woman is testing whether a man can accept her independence and not view her ambitions as a threat to their relationship. From Jung's perspective, these cultural and social tests are related to the integration of individual values into larger collective complexes. When choosing a partner, a woman is guided not only by her personal experiences but also by deeply ingrained social and cultural values, which continue to influence her decisions. Jung noted that every person, especially women, brings with them a baggage of cultural expectations and norms that have a crucial impact on their relationship choices. Social and cultural tests allow a woman to ensure that her partner can meet these requirements, thus ensuring harmony in the relationship and ensuring that their relationship does not conflict with societal expectations. Another important aspect of social testing is assessing how a man copes with cultural and social differences that may arise in their relationship. Modern relationships increasingly include partners from diverse cultural backgrounds and with diverse life experiences, which presents challenges but also the potential to enrich the relationship. A woman tests a man by examining how he copes with differences in their approach to life, work, family, and even religion. Is he open to her world, her values, and her experiences? Can he accept differences and find common ground? The woman also examines the man's attitudes toward social issues such as equality, social justice, and the way he treats others, especially those who are disadvantaged. These tests also examine the man as a person who fits into a specific cultural context, with its norms and expectations. How does the man perceive the role of women in society? How does he respond to issues of equality, and does he understand her concerns about these issues? Therefore, the social and cultural tests a woman undertakes are crucial to building a lasting, harmonious relationship. When seeking a partner, a woman wants to be sure that the man fits into her world and that together they will be able to create a space where they respect each other, both as individuals and as members of larger social communities. These tests concern not only the man's ability to adapt to her world but also to create a shared world based on mutual respect and understanding. Both Schopenhauer and Jung, though in very different contexts, acknowledged that human relationships, especially romantic ones, are full of subtle tests and trials that are essential to building true understanding and harmony. For Schopenhauer, relationships between men and women were primarily a mechanism for the preservation of the species. However, this perspective also implies the belief that women, unconsciously but fully consciously, conduct tests to assess whether men meet her biological, social, and emotional needs. Carl Jung, on the other hand, viewed these tests within a broader psychological and archetypal context. The tests a woman inflicts on a man are not only tests of his ability to provide material stability or power in the relationship, but also a test of whether he is capable of fully understanding her inner needs and moving with her through the process of individuation. Jung emphasized that what happens in interpersonal relationships is closely linked to deep, unconscious psychological mechanisms that influence our behaviors, decisions, and choices. Tests of love, loyalty, emotional security, and adaptability are not only an attempt to determine a man's suitability for a given relationship, but also a method through which a woman seeks to understand the deeper mechanisms that govern her own emotions and needs. What may seem like a trivial test is, in reality, an attempt to understand whether her partner is ready to co-create a life of balance, trust, and mutual support. In the context of modern relationships, these tests are becoming increasingly conscious. Equipped with greater self-awareness and knowledge of her own desires and needs, a woman constantly tests her partner's ability to meet not only her emotional demands but also the challenges that arise in this shared life. This process may seem difficult, but it is also the foundation for building relationships that will be deeper and last for a long time. All the tests a woman undergoes are aimed not only at assessing the man but also at her own development. Modern women desire not only stability but also a full relationship based on mutual respect, authenticity, and the ability to grow together. A woman, guided by her inner wisdom, seeks a partner who is willing to walk with her through life, not only in moments of happiness, but also in moments of challenge and difficulty. Ultimately, these tests are designed to help create a relationship that is authentic, deep, and whole. While each test is different and has its own specifics, they all share one common thread. They are all part of a process of building mutual understanding and wholeness in the relationship. From a Jungian perspective, this is a process of integration, in which both women and men learn from each other, transforming their archetypal images into something real and with the potential to endure.